training, the refresher course. We've got a few things to tidy up here. Some other considerations for scoring, things to remember in general as you're going through the driving test. Some common mistakes we see. Remember that signals are not required while people are doing the backing maneuver or while they're doing the parallel parking maneuver. Okay. Now, if they had to drive to the side of the road, we tell them to drive to the side of the road and stop in the backing maneuver. If they had to move over a car width to the right to get there, then yes, they would be required to signal and check a blind spot check to the right at a minimum. Okay. Parallel parking, same thing. If they had to change lanes to get over there, move over a car width of space to approach the car, then yes, you could score failing to signal or check the blind spot if they didn't do either one. Please note that while the applicants are driving in reverse, they are not required to use a signal. Sometimes, I'll tell you, folks will put on the hazard lights and they'll be on while they're driving in reverse. That's fine. But I'll tell you, probably about 20% of folks forget to turn the hazard lights off when they re-enter traffic. And if they have the hazard lights on while they make a movement to the left of one car width, that is considered a lane change, and you should have been signaling to the left and not using the hazard lights. You would score signal in that case under the maneuver scoring. I know that's a lot of words. Reach out to us if you have any questions. Drive at i5driving.com. Lane travel. Remember, anytime you're approaching a maneuver space, anytime you're driving to the side of the road, you score the blind spot check, use of the turn signal, and if they collide with the curb, that's all scored under lane travel. Every time you approach a maneuver, it's scored under lane travel. Anytime you get back on the road, score that under the actual maneuver, the other four. Okay. So it's lane travel on the way in, and once they're there, when they re-enter traffic, everything else gets scored under the maneuver itself. Remember that parking lots are considered private property, so it's not amenable to regular deductions on the test, because you're not going to get a traffic citation for driving weirdly on private property. Okay, it's not public roads. All right, now remember, we can still score dangerous action and accident if they occur in a parking lot. The shortest driving test I ever had years ago, a gentleman was backing out of the stall space, wasn't looking behind him, made it about 2.5 feet, and there was a car behind us. I had to hit the brake to stop him and say, hey, there's a car behind you. That ends the test. That's a dangerous action because I had to take physical control of the vehicle. Even though it was in a parking lot, we moved forward a couple of feet, and I explained the error, and really we just went out again for another driving test. I don't remember how he did that time. I do remember it was the shortest one I ever had. It's about 2.5 feet. It took all of less than a minute to do this driving test. So remember, only dangerous action and accident are scored if they are in a parking lot. Remember that you can still score attention under the general driving performance section. That's on the lower right corner. You'll see that ATTN for attention. If they blow through a stop sign in a parking lot like this one, that's a stop sign that's mounted in, not a stop line or any other marking, just the red octagon sign. Okay. Now remember, if the parallel parking maneuver is done on private property with traffic stanchion, then you're still going to score it, the regular stuff, for parallel parking. You're not going to score them approaching the stanchion. You are going to score everything else that's scoreable within the maneuver. Now remember, you're starting the test. Sometimes folks leave on the parking brake, right? If they leave it on while attempting to leave, do not score this. Do tell them, hey, you gotta disengage your parking brake before we get going, because we don't want them to cause damage to their car. Now once you're out on the roads, if they drive off with the parking brake on, you still tell them, but this time you're going to score it. And that goes in the upper right corner under mechanical operation, letters PB. Pedestrians have a bit of a special case, right? Remember, for pedestrians, if you went around one because it's reasonable, legal, and necessary, you would not score it, right? We have a location in Federal Way, and there's a lot of folks who just wander around on the street. They cross when they want to, not necessarily when they're supposed to, right? And you may have to go around them. Now, if you're not sure a defined error occurred, then do not score it. Remember, as we mentioned earlier in the right-of-way section, you do not always have to yield to pedestrians. You yield to pedestrians in a marked or unmarked crosswalk. Right? Now, you always have to exercise due care never to collide with a pedestrian. Right, so you can't hit them, but you don't always have to yield to them. So it may be a scoring possibility. So let's take a look at that briefly. Remember, if an applicant makes contact with a pedestrian, score it as an accident. And of course, you're going to have some paperwork and some discussion, of course, if you hit a pedestrian on a driving test. If the pedestrian jumps out of the way, you score that as a dangerous action. Automatic disqualification, those are. Now, as of the 2021 update, you can score it when when your applicant drives too close to a pedestrian. Before 2021, it wasn't scored at all. Right now, if a pedestrian steps off at a crosswalk, not at an intersection, and the applicant goes around the pedestrian instead of stopping, now we score this under right-of-way, failing to yield the right-of-way. Failing to yield the right-of-way. Remember, Washington state law for pedestrians is that the pedestrians need to be on the other side of the road, where the center line is, plus one more lane. Okay, pedestrians have to be on the other half plus one more lane, and then it's safe to go on the opposite side of the road. Okay, so in this scenario here, on the right-hand side, when a driver comes up by the crosswalk and this pedestrian has already crossed over that one lane mark, you're required to make a complete stop for pedestrians in the crosswalk in Washington State. Not just yield, you also have to make a complete stop. For the one making a left turn, once that pedestrian reaches that one lane away from the center line, you have to make a complete stop. Okay. If they don't, you're going to score that under right-of-way. Now remember, once the pedestrian or cyclist is beyond that one half of the lane, one lane of their half of the roadway, then you can go. Now, I'll tell you, I wouldn't necessarily be too strict if folks wait until pedestrians clear the entire crosswalk. Okay, I suppose you could make a case for hesitation under general driving performance if someone is hesitating because they're waiting for faraway traffic. They may believe that's what the law is. That's not really as much hesitation as much as I think this is what the law is, and I'm supposed to wait until they clear the crosswalk. It is the law in California, at least it was at the time of this video recording, that you can't be in the crosswalk at all if there's a pedestrian anywhere in the crosswalk. And a lot of folks move up here from California, and it's great. We love to have them. I married one of them, and but that's not the law here. Okay, so remember what the law is, and if they are too close to that pedestrian, you're going to score that right-of-way violation, the 4-point variety. Now for flashing yellow lights, Washington Driver's Guide states a flashing yellow traffic light, it means slow down and proceed with caution. So we're supposed to slow down and proceed with caution. If you got a flashing yellow arrow, of course it's the same as a green circle light. Left turns are allowed here and from the lane you're in, but you have to yield to oncoming traffic, including bicyclists and pedestrians. A lot of folks are confused by the flashing yellow arrow. Sometimes they hesitate and just sit and wait because they're not sure what to do. That's a good candidate for the hesitation penalty on the bottom left under traffic signal lights. Hesitation means they're really just not sure what to do. They're not really a right-of-way issue. They just don't understand what this means. And really it's the same as a green circle light. Some scoring possibilities. When nothing else is happening in the traffic scene, the applicant fails to slow down and proceed with caution. You can score this under traffic control devices. So the flashing yellow falls under traffic control device. That would be the 4-point penalty for failure to comply. Now, how much is it slow down? That's going to be up to you. If it's 30 miles per hour, do you need them to slow down to 20, 15, just 5 under, just let off the gas and coast while scanning? You'll have to decide, was it safe or was there danger potential? Remember, you're trying to determine if there was danger potential. That's going to be based on the scene you're in. And I wish I could give you more specifics based on your route. I haven't seen it, sadly. I remember, of course, if someone fails to yield the right-of-way when turning or moving ahead at a flashing yellow, and they're supposed to yield the right-of-way, they don't, you'll score that under right-of-way. That's the 4-point danger potential error. And just like before, if evasive action had to be taken by a pedestrian or other motorist, or if you have to take control, score that as a dangerous action. Remember, you're looking for an obvious and significant motion, hard braking, swerving, not angry swerving to be angry at the applicant because they're driving poorly. You'll have to make that distinction. Were they just driving aggressively because they were irritated at the applicant, or were they actually swerving because there was real danger? Right? You're an expert. You can recognize the difference, so make sure you score it correctly. If there is one, a dangerous action or a collision, make sure you have to say what it was, what you did, and the location where it occurred. You got to write all that in the bottom section over the if no reason there, right there. You check off dangerous action. No, they did not qualify. Remember to write what action you took, what happened, and the location where it occurred. Okay. All right, next up, we're going to go through completing the test, finishing up this series. See you then.